I'm Alex Leflore, Edgerton Contractors, site supervisor. I have a unique story. I've learned of Edgerton Contractors back when I was a kid. I used to follow construction companies around. And it just so happened, growing up in the city of Milwaukee, I kept encountering Edgerton Contractors, and particularly a person who's near and dear to me to this day, Troy, who's like a father figure to me, and kept coming back, kept meeting nice people from Edgerton back as an 8-year-old kid. I mean, it was a different time, different world than what we live now. You can't have an 8-year-old kid just running randomly around downtown Milwaukee. I mean, something would be wrong if it happened now compared to, 30 years ago. But found an interest in Edgerton, kept coming back, kept finding different job sites. Kind of helped that a lot of the people that I kept meeting were really nice, and kind of kept me wanting to keep coming around and meeting them. Yeah, so that's how I got introduced to Edgerton back as an 8-year-old kid. So you can honestly say I've been associated with Edgerton for 30 years. There was times where I would visit the projects before I would go to school with the Wisconsin Center. And I remember one time, I used to cut it close and go visit Troy, and this is when Troy became a supervisor, and visit Troy down at the Wisconsin Center before I would go to school. And I remember once, a cop wouldn't believe me, but a cop came down and he was like, "You're skipping school, you're skipping school." And I'm like, "No, I'm not skipping school." I was like, "I'm just watching them load up the crusher." They were loading the crusher up. And Troy's trying to defend my honor, but the cop's not listening one bit to it. So then they take me in and whatever, and looked at all my attendance, and I showed up perfectly on time for school and everything, which vindicated me. But yeah, at the same time, that just showed, I guess, my determination to continue to watch Edgerton and learn and just constantly see. I guess over the years too, I became a topic at Edgerton, I guess, where, hey, the kid Alex, he was at this job, or we seen the kid Alex over there. And there was times too when I was younger, I used to draw pictures that they take back to the office. And this was back when we had the office on 13th and in college, where they would hang them up in the trailer offices that we would have. I grew up in a single parent household, no father figures really. And Troy was kind of a fatherly influence for me. It was a lot of times where I would go down there and there was a trust factor, and I wouldn't have this trust factor with an 8 to 10-year-old kid, but they would give me lunch money to buy the crew lunch, expecting me to come back, and I come right back with it, So it was an influence of trust, a bond that we built over years, a bond that did break for a little bit. Came back when I graduated high school and reached out to them, and pretty much, back in those days, phone books were still prevalent. Cell phones today, you could find anybody, but back then I had to look in the phone book. And I remember Troy telling me, if you ever lose contact with me, look me up in the phone book, and that's my house number. So I looked them up the day after I graduated high school, and I called them just randomly. And another thing that's ancient is answering machines. Left a message on the answering machine and said, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I haven't talked to you in a couple years, but this is Alex." I was an 8-year-old kid that used to hang out around you guys downtown. And I remember, I didn't know this, but he told me a couple years later, or years later, that he started to panic because he's like, this kid reached back out to me. I was never expecting that to happen, and we got to hold our end of the deal, because one of the things that was always told to me was, if you get good grades in high school, or in school, if you graduate high school, you'll have a job at Edgerton Contractors. And I wouldn't say I had good grades in high school, But I would say that I held my end of the deal up with graduating and started here when I was 18. I came in the doors as a laborer. Labored for 2 years, then got put into the operators and was in the operators for quite some time, and then got promoted to supervisor. So it's a process that wasn't handed to me, and honestly, Lord, as an 18-year-old, I probably shouldn't have been a supervisor to begin with. It takes steps to, get to that process. Definitely always wanted to be part of Edgerton. Definitely always wanted to run construction equipment or possibly be a supervisor. That was always in my blood. So much to the fact that when I used to follow it, I ran into another Edgerton crew at MacArthur Square, which is the courthouse. And I remember running into this guy, Bob Hansen, who was one of the nicest guys on earth. Gave me half his lunch, talked to me like a man when I was only like an 8, 9-year-old kid during the summer. And I'm like literally begging this guy. I'm like, hey, can I run that skid steer over there? And every job I would run up to when I was a kid, it was always my sneak question of trying to get on equipment and trying to learn and run it. But obviously, and definitely today, it wouldn't be able to happen. But back then, their insurance policy, they said, no, we can't let you do it. They definitely, if we were somewhere else, we let you try it, but we can't let you run equipment. But a lot of my training was out in the field. It's pretty, I guess it's a lot easier to learn stuff physically doing it compared to work and sitting in a classroom all day. You only get good at stuff if you're actually doing it. Yeah, and that goes back to school for me. I wasn't much of a book person. I'm more of a hands-on and seeing. Case in point with some of the opportunities I've had at Edgerton, I was a rover guy for so many years, and pretty much, we had our trainings to begin with to get everybody used to it, but a lot of that is trial by error, and you kind of learn and you get better. It's just like that with running equipment. You get better, but the more you're doing it, the more you sit at it, get better laboring. The more you do labor work, the more you learn, and you learn from a lot of the guys that have done it. So part of the operating deal, I remember the time it was offered to me by our CEO, Steve Knockreiner, who back then was vice president. He knew my desires and wants to advance at the company and gave me an opportunity. He called me and gave me an opportunity to become an apprentice operator, which was during the recession, so it didn't go as fast as it normally would. But gave me an opportunity as an operator. It took me 4.5 years to get through my apprenticeship because of the recession year. And yeah, was able to become a journeyman and still am a journeyman now. Set up a great career for me. If people always ask me the question about, wow, you've been with Edgerton a long time, or you've been associated with Edgerton a long time. I guess how I look at it is, Edgerton kind of saved my life. And you might be like, well, how can a construction company save your life? If you look to my upbringing, growing up in the inner city, a lot of influences and stuff that are there. There's drug activity, there's gang violence, there's people dying, there's people in and up in jail. I was fortunate enough to find a company that kept me coming back around, and don't get it twisted, it's probably a higher being that kind of helped guide me to that. But you look at it, I'm 38 years old in July. I have a really stable job with a great company that has some of the bigger projects in this city, and now we're getting out of the state, some of the bigger projects that you can come across. You got to look at it and just kind of feel like it's a fortunate thing. It's a higher meaning, to just get me out of the hood into a situation like what I am. It's not every day you get stories like that.